What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the basics. Today we're learning about trend lines. We're going to show you the best ways that we feel to draw them up, how to find potential trades off them, and a few other tips that are going to help you be able to use these trend lines. So what we're looking at right now is a trend line that is drawn up incorrectly. As you can see, it's pretty obvious. We've got a lot of breaks, a lot of breakouts, which makes it hard to find trades on a trend line because you kind of start second guessing yourself whether that this trend line that we've drawn up here is going to hold. Obviously, it holds here and here, but if you had gotten to a trade on the trend line here, you probably would have been stopped out here as well, and also in these areas. So the best way to stop that is to learn to draw it correctly. Now, the first tip is do not be afraid to cut certain points of the market out of the trend line. And what I mean by that is this area here and this area here, we're going to cut them out. We don't want them. Trying to get these 2 points in this trend line is making that whole trend line completely inaccurate. So a better way to draw it up is to cut those out entirely. Find new points. Now the second tip is we want as many touches as we can get without making it completely inaccurate. Something like this and this is going to give us the best result for a trend line. You can see the breakouts now aren't so bad. We have some little ones here and here, but obviously these two ones towards the end are still quite high, but that's sort of signifying that the trend line is weakening. We can also see that we have a lot more touches on the trend line now. So these are touching now, touches here and here, whereas before we just had a heap of breakouts rather than just taps of the trend line. Also got a few down the bottom, a lot more down the bottom actually. So drawing it up like this and trying to get as many touches as you can is gonna make it a lot easier to find where you should enter a trade. Now, second tip, how do you try and trade when there are still breakouts, when there are still these wicks? Well, the best way to do that is to use a buffer zone. Just go over here. We can see I've drawn up a trend line. It's got as many touches as we can, but it still has all these little breakouts that might make it hard on a smaller time frame to jump into a sell or a buy. So what we did for this is we created a buffer zone. The best way to do that is when you're drawing up a trend line, if there is a little breakout like this, you just Control C, Control V, and line it up with that breakout to the top of the breakout. And then we have our buffer zone. Same with this one, Control C, Control V, take it to the bottom of this breakout, and there we have our buffer zone. So we know that these are our buffer zones, and it's going to give us a lot more room to play when it comes to markets coming up to these zones. So now we're not afraid of it breaking this first trend line as much. As long as it doesn't break this second one, it's still valid. So the first tip is to make the trend have a buffer zone, which we have done. So that's going to be incredibly useful to you when trying to find a trade. Markets aren't perfect. It's not always going to hit that first trend line here and bounce back like it did on these two. Sometimes we have to have a bit of wiggle room. The market is not perfect. Trend lines can be confirmed after 2 touches either side. Technically, it can almost be confirmed after 2 touch on one side and 1 touch on the other side, meaning we have 1 touch here and we have 2 touches here. We could pretty much confirm a trend line is starting to form. Trying to find a trend line with just 2 touches is going to be incredibly hard because you don't know exactly where the market is going to stop to create that trend line. So just wait for 2 taps either side. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Now we have 2. You can easily draw a trend line up from just 2 taps alone. So now you can sort of draw up a trend line on where you think the market should go from these taps. Remember, trying to include as many touches as you can. And now you kind of have a rough idea of where you think the trend line will form. And if you draw that straight out, you'll see that if it does follow the trend line, you've got pretty accurate readings from just after 2 taps either side. The third one is make sure you're using other confluences with a trend line. Don't just buy a zone because it gets to the bottom and you want to make some quick money. Don't just do this. This is a good way to lose money in the long run. Just because that this trend line that I've drawn up is worked for that sort of type of trade, just trading from the bottom, doesn't mean it's going to work 90% of the time. Given that this is all played out already, it's a lot easier to draw a trend line because it all is said and done. Whereas if we go to current market and we say, oh yeah, this is a trend line, just going to buy here and wait for it to get to the top of this trend line, there's a very, very good chance we're going to be in for a bad day and get stopped out. So use other confluences. Now the best way to do that in my time of trading has been using your fibs and horizontal levels. So say the market is coming to here and we have this trend line drawn up and we want to look for a sell. We'll make our buffer zone. Righto, that's our buffer zone. We can start moving it around a little bit. Got our buffer zone here, and now we want to look to sell at this trend line. Right, I'm going to show you how to use the Fibonacci tool and market structure to help you find a trade. So I'm going to actually go from this point here and this point here for the fib tool. So I'll grab my fib tool and I'll mark it up. So you can see it's sitting at this 618 level, which is pretty ideal. As I said, the market isn't perfect. It's going to bounce around this 618 level. It's not just going to hit that orange line and drop straight down. That's exactly why we have our buffer on our trend line. We want to give it a little bit of room. So this is still valid. Now, as well as having this fib level, we also have a bit of market structure on the left-hand side. So we have this kind of support level turned resistance level. So it wouldn't be a horrible idea if we wanted to get into a trade around this level. Now where we put the stop loss? Perfect. Right above the last buffer zone. That's easy. It's already set there for us. Take profit at the lowest point. Potentially you could aim for down here. I wouldn't recommend it though, given trend lines can cut out a lot earlier than what you think. Right here, for example, starts coming back down, comes back up all the way, starts coming up, comes down all the way. So just to be on the safer side, give us the highest probability of getting a good trade, we're going to aim for that low swing. And then, as you know, market comes down and we hit a take profit. And if you had to aim for the line, you actually wouldn't have got it at all, and you would have got stopped out. So that's a good example of why you take the lesser risk. Don't leave money on the table, but don't get greedy. Righto, guys, that is pretty much the whole summary of using trend lines, best ways to use them, and helping you find little trades on them, kind of like a little strategy for you. I hope you learned a lot. Make sure you subscribe and check out our other videos. We'll be posting more back to the basics and other stuff, whatever Kobe has made for his side of the YouTube channel. And hope you learn a lot. Follow us on all our socials, all that good stuff. Thank you very much.